Thank everybody for joining us. Thank you all very much. And we're continuing with the Lalitavistara Sutra, and we're on chapter 8 is where we'll begin tonight. And but before we begin, does anybody have any comments or questions about anything that we've been talking about thus far? Okay. So, I suggested last time we talked about reviewing the introduction and whether you had an opportunity to do that. But if you haven't, again, I encourage everybody to do that, and at least in pieces. I've read it several times, and each time I'm preparing for our class like this, I go and read parts of it to just kind of refresh my memory, keep it on the top of my mind. So, so tonight we should be able to finish this book. So this takes us through 8, 9, and 10, chapters 8, 9, and 10. And then we're going to watch, in the next few weeks, we're going to watch this film called Mythos 2, which is a class that is given by Joseph Campbell, which is really, really, really good. So we watched it a few weeks ago on Noble Film Night on Friday night, and not everybody could be there, but this particular teaching that Joseph Campbell gives, this lecture he gives, is really very, very good, very powerful, and brings a lot of clarity to what the Dharma is, what Buddhism is, but also what spirituality is, in together with Buddhism, together with other traditions and so on. So it's a magnificent thing. It's a 5-hour piece, and we'll do it in 1-hour increments each week. So, and then we can have a discussion about it after that we present the actual film. So, so what I'll be doing during that time is I'll be printing the rest of the Lalitavistara for everybody and sending it out to everybody. So I assume, and we can have a show of hands if everybody is going to be willing to continue with this, so I can print books for everybody. And then those who want the e-files, I can send the e-files to you. And so that'll be fine. And I'll make a note in our Buddha Practice Study chat group in our WhatsApp. I will send everybody notice that if they want to, have the books, that they can have the books. But last time I think I printed something like 30 books or something like that, 30 sets of books. So we can see, that things have, some people have kind of not come in very regularly or not at all, whatever. And that's to be expected. This time of the year is the time of the year when people are taking their breaks and so on. So that has something to do with it also. And people are watching on YouTube. So the people that are watching on YouTube, if you want a set of books, you can write us on Buddha Practice Study at gmail.com and give us the information we need to mail you a set of books, and we'll be more than happy to do that. And we can, send you the 2 remaining books that go with this set, or we can send you a whole set if you don't have that. So we can discuss that if you send an email and everything. So, and then also, I think that what we'll do is we'll start, when we leave the Lalitavistara Sutra, then we're going to pick up on the sutras on samadhi. So we'll start picking up on the Samadhi Raja Sutra. So that'll be the next big thing that we do. So I'll include books for that. So that'll be really, really good too. And to understand what the samadhi is, what that state of mind is. So I think that'll be really good. So that'll take us into the fall and into the winter time, I think. So I hope everybody's enjoying this. And if you have any comments about that, please let me know.
Lance, would you, because I know how much thought and intentionality you put into what you did mail us, is there some, like, can we send in a suggested donation to your Venmo or Zelle?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great. I'll make an announcement, what that would be. I imagine it's going to be something similar to what we did last time. I have to take a look at what's involved with the printing of the Samadhi books. But I know that the two books that need to be printed for the Lalitavistara are the same size as these books that we have. So it's a set of four books that are all basically the same size. So the other ones, I think, are almost as much. So that I got to refresh my memory on. So yes, that would be much appreciated to cover the costs of printing and the costs of shipping. That would be great. So just as a reminder, to the people on YouTube and everything, everybody that participates in being able to provide, the information, the website, the things that we do, everybody's a volunteer. Nobody gets paid. What we do ask for are reimbursements for expenses and so on. So whether it's Zoom or whether it's the fees to keep the website going or it's printing costs and everything like that, the paper and the shipping and so on like that. That's what we ask for. Anything that is a overage on that, we use for when the lamas are coming, and because we make offerings to them, we have to pay for their expenses, their travel expenses, and so on, and then food and everything while everybody is together. So the any extra money is not used on anything else but for Dharma. So I just want to emphasize that if there's ever a question in people's mind about that, to settle that. Thank you. So, so going back now to this, so I think the way to do this is what we've been doing is go through and read this. So, Ryan, you don't have a set of these books, do you? Do you have a set of the sutra books? I don't think you do. The set of books? Oh, you do? Oh, well, perfect. Excuse me for not remembering. All right, well, terrific. Can you read tonight, Ryan?
Sure. Sorry, I'm talking back to you like I was unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, let's see here. So,
Do we start in chapter 8?
yeah, if you will start on chapter 8, if you will do chapter 8, do the whole chapter. And then, Debbie, if you will do chapter 9, ornaments, okay? And then the next chapter, chapter 10, is a few more pages with a few tongue twisters. So, Zara, would you please read the first part of chapter 10, which would include the first page and the second page? And then the next two pages, then I'll read the next page after that, the third page. And then I'd like to ask if Bernie would start reading to the end, start reading on chapter 10.16, because there are pronunciations in there of the Sanskrit that I think Bernie is better at being able to articulate than the rest of us. So would that be okay, Bernie? Your microphone's muted, so I can't hear you.
pushing the wrong button. Yeah, it's fine for me, but I'm not promising to pronounce everything correctly, but I'll do my best.
All right, well, that'll be great, because I know that'll be very, very good. So, oh, Matt, I left Matt out. If Matt, Matt, why don't you read the third page then, and I won't read anything. Okay. All right, is that okay, Matt?
Uh, yeah, sure. So that's
Chapter 10, the third page.
okay. It's like 10.10, that page.
Correct.
Okay.
That page. And then Zara is going to read 10.1 through 10.9. If you'll, Zara, if you'll read up to 10 up through 10.8, and then Matt, you start at 10.9. How's that? Not too confusing?
Okay.
All right. I just want to give everybody a chance to participate. All right, so please try and read slowly and deliberately. Imagine that you're reading to 5-year-old kids, so do it so that they can comprehend, so other people can comprehend and hear the words together and so on like that. So that'll be much appreciated if you can do that. Okay, so Ryan, when you're ready, chapter 8. And I'll tell you what, let's just go through chapter 8 first and then have a little discussion, and then go to chapter 9, have a little discussion, and then chapter 10. Okay?
Okay. Chapter 8, Going to the Temple. Monks, on the very evening of the Bodhisattva's birth, there were 20,000 girls born among the ruling class, the priestly class, the merchants, and the householders, such as the landowners. All of them were offered to the Bodhisattva by their parents to serve and honor him. King Sudana also gave 20,000 girls to the Bodhisattva to serve and honor him. His friends, his ministers, his kinfolk, and his blood relatives also offered 20,000 girls to serve and honor the Bodhisattva. Finally, the member of ministerial assemblies also offered 20,000 girls to serve and honor the Bodhisattva. Monks, at that time, the male and female elders of the Sakya clan gathered and said to King Sudana, "King, please pay heed. The prince should now worship in the temple."
Should
King Sudana,
now worship.
the prince should now worship in the temple. King Sudana replied, "Yes, it would be excellent for him to worship in this way. Therefore, let the city be decorated. Ornament the streets, crossroads, intersections, and marketplaces. Send away all the hunchbacks and all the blind, deaf, and mute people, as well as anyone who is deformed or crippled. Gather everything auspicious. Beat the drums of merit and ring the bells of auspiciousness. Ornament the gates of this excellent city. Play the most pleasant instruments, cymbals, and drums. Assemble all the local lords and gather the merchants, householders, ministers, gatekeepers, and all the local people. Prepare chariots for the girls. Procure brimming vases. Gather the priests who are experts in recitation. Ornately decorate the temples. Monks, everyone followed the commands issued by the king. Then King Sudana went to his home and spoke to Prajapati Gautama, saying, "The prince is to pray in the temple. Ornament him well." Prajapati Gautama replied, "Of course," and dressed the prince lavishly. While the prince was being dressed, with a slight smile and no hint of annoyance, he spoke these pleasant words to his maternal aunt. "Mother, where are you taking me?" She replied, "Son, I am taking you to the temple." The prince then smiled, laughed, and spoke these verses to his maternal aunt. When I was born, this trichilocosm, when I was born, this trichilocosm trembled. Sakra, Brahma, the demigods, the Mahoragas, Surya, and Gandra, as well as Vaisravana and Kumara, all bowed their heads to my feet and paid homage to me. What other god is there who is superior to me, whom my mother takes me to worship today? I am superior to all the gods. I am the God of gods. There is no other god like me. So how could anyone be superior? Still, mother, I will follow worldly customs. When beings see my miraculous displays, they will be pleased. It will inspire them with great respect, and gods and humans will know that I am the God of gods. Monks, once the main streets, crossroads, intersections, and markets had been richly ornamented with praises and benedictions of all kinds posted around the city, a richly ornamented chariot was prepared for the prince in the inner courtyard. With all auspicious circumstances having been arranged in this manner, King Sudana lifted the prince onto his lap, surrounded by priests, townspeople, merchants, householders, ministers, local lords, gatekeepers, local people, friends, and kinfolk. They traveled through the richly ornamented roads, intersections, crossroads, and marketplaces, which were enveloped in the fragrant scent of incense and strewn with flower petals, filled with horses, elephants, chariots, and foot soldiers, with parasols, victory banners, and flags held aloft, and resounding with many instruments. At that time, 100,000 gods led the Bodhisattva's chariot. Many hundreds of millions of gods and maidens scattered flowers from the sky above and played cymbals. Monks, King Sudana, accompanied by the great royal procession, splendor, and ceremony, brought the prince to the temple. As soon as the Bodhisattva placed his right foot in the temple, the insentient statues of the gods, such as Siva, Skanda, Narayana, Kubera, Kandra, Surya, Vaisravana, Sakra, Brahma, and the guardians of the world, all stood up from their seats and prostrated at the Bodhisattva's feet. Right then, 100,000 gods and humans cried out in amazement and delight. The fine city of Kapilavastu trembled in 6 ways. A rain of divine flowers fell, and 100,000 divine instruments sounded without even being played. Then the various statues in the temple all returned to their seats and spoke these verses. Mount Meru, the greatest and best of mountains, would never bow down to a mustard seed. The great ocean, the Naga king's abode, would never bow down to a puddle. The brilliant sun and moon would never bow down before a firefly. So how could the noble one, with merit and wisdom, bow down before the gods? The gods and humans of this trichilocosm are like mustard seeds, puddles, and fireflies, and yet filled with pride. If the world bows to he who is like Mount Meru, the ocean, the sun, and the moon, the self-arisen sublime one of this world, then they would attain heaven and nirvana. Monks, when the Bodhisattva entered the temple, 3,200,000 gods gave rise to the intention to attain unexcelled, perfect, and complete awakening. Monks, these are the circumstances and causes related to the Bodhisattva's equanimity as he was brought to the temple.
Very good. Thank you very much. So does anybody have any comment about the hyperbole of all of this?
I was just gonna say, this is Zara. I was just gonna say, I'm reading it very symbolically, right? Because like I know it's translated and stuff, so I'm trying not to get too caught up in some of the description. More appreciation of the sequence, if that makes sense. Like basically like the next scene, like the next set of things that have happened. So I appreciate it from that. It's very beautiful.
It definitely speaks to that there was a sense of this religiosity of this, that there was a temple and people would come and so on like that.
I find it a little tough, this chapter. A lot of the parts of it, or pretty much all of it, to be honest. I don't know, like it sounds very like prideful, like the way that they're describing like what the Buddha as a bodhisattva is, like I'm the god of the gods. I couldn't imagine someone talking like this, like a I guess it's being used as like a literary device, that kind of language or that way of him talking, and some of the other kind of cultural things too, like in the beginning where like they're offering up all these girls to him. Like I don't know exactly what that means, but I probably don't love it. So I don't know.
Hey Matt, I'm glad you actually said that because I literally, when I was reading it, I was like, I wonder if they had the same thing with like when Jesus was born, right? Where there was all this over the top, like he's here, and because I kind of chuckled because I read it a couple times and I had to appreciate because it's so region specific, right? Like he was born and like he's like the savior but my point is thank you for saying what you were thinking out loud. That was really my point of taking myself off mute. Thank you for that.
Yeah, but maybe I'm viewing it into not in the right way or something. I don't know, or taking it
Yeah,
wrong.
and I mean, and he's what? He's a 1 year old kid or something like that.
Yeah,
You know,
great language
2 years
skills for that
old or
age. Yeah,
something. So there's a high degree of pageantry here, and but I think this speaks to the culture of the time. Even if he wasn't, considered to be the Buddha, I mean, he was still a prince. And to have a prince, be regarded, with all this kind of devotion and pageantry and so on. Bernie, you have any words about this? Because I know you're well read about things like this.
Oh, I don't know. I was just wondering where he kept all these 20,000 girls that he got. But I said that must be a pretty big grocery bill at the end of the month to feed all those 20,000 girls that he's got to take care of now. I imagine these girls were meant as servants, servants to the king and servants to the prince. Obviously, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. And the whole point of the text is just to hammer into your head that the Buddha is superior to all the Hindu gods. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious that that's the point that they're making here. So I don't have anything to say
yeah,
other than that.
yeah.
I thought it was interesting that even the statues became animated. That was really that's great. You know, for this to be written 2,000 years ago, really speaks about this what we might call modern technology or science or something like that, some way to manifest this kind of transformation is really remarkable. So I look at it that it's really good story. Debbie, did you have any comment about it?
No, I have to agree. It is, well, I mean, yeah, women are property and their livestock. Yeah, I get that. It's true, the moving statues is, yeah, no, that's something you would see in a movie. And then with all this hyperbole is this like unspoken understanding that, when the Buddha was born, he could tell you exactly what he was. And then, by the time he's a teenager and a young adult, he's, he's still figuring it out. It's like he forgets that, he has some understanding when he's just born that, oh yeah, this is what I am. And I still have memories of what I did the last time. But by the time, he gets to the point where he's looking at the world and seeing it very different. It's like he's forgotten all that, right? And, and it also is interesting that, a lot of the stories, a lot of the history said that he was very sheltered. Suradana, made a point of keeping him away from the horrors of life so that he would be focusing more on, being a universal monarch or being a king in politics. In this text, the story is a little bit different than when it's told the later half, that Suradana is perfectly fine for, it's like he could either be universal monarch or this great spiritual leader, and he's fine with either one. But as the story progresses, his family, works really hard to keep him in this bubble. So he just focuses on politics.
Yes, thank you. Very good. Brian, what was going through your mind as you were reading this?
Pretty much a little piece of what every single person said so far. So,
Do you
yeah,
think
I
of
don't
your
know.
kids in
It
this
seems,
way?
what's that?
Do you think of your kids in this way?
No, not at all. That didn't cross my mind. I was thinking the same thing Debbie was just mentioning about how his dad seems so involved with the spiritual aspect, and like this, and that's not part of the story that I had ever heard. And then, he has to go through all these trials in the forest, and go through all those experiences as a young kid, and I don't know. So it doesn't really jive with that part of the story that I've heard. Um, some of it seems pretty ridiculous, like Matt was saying. Um, and then I thought what Bernie said made a lot of sense about, the kind of maybe the purpose of why it's written or why it's written the way it is. But I don't know. I struggle with this stuff. I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it's cool to read through.
I think it's interesting, when we have children and what are we raising them as? So it seems like, most of us, and myself included, that we're raising our kids to be kind of like us with our neuroses and our narcissism and our bad behavior and stuff like that. Here we are, many years later, trying to recognize and be able to clean off the obstacles that are blocking our Buddha nature. And we're not treating our kids like Buddhas. And maybe maybe that's something that, here this becomes a metaphor for that. And maybe, to be teaching, spiritual values and stuff like that to children when they're 1 year old, 2 years old, etc., is something that we should be doing. So I think that's an interesting element to consider. Anybody have a comment about that?
Well, I agree with you completely. Um, I'd have to contemplate what that would look like in a Western culture where you have kids addicted to TV by age 2, but I'd have to think
Well,
about that.
isn't that the parents' fault?
Well, I mean, if you have to have a babysitter because you have to make money and your babysitter's got them in front, or the daycare's got them, on these addictive sensory objects. So at a very young age, kids are losing their Buddha nature, their, the possessiveness, their ego, the innocence used to be longer. Like the kids used to be so precious until about age 8 or 9. Now their innocence is I call it the Buddha nature, or God consciousness is gone so much earlier because of access to all these sensory, external sensory things, and they get super possessive, and the ego gets so entrenched, and then they have to go through their own suffering. So, I agree, though.
Very good. I think it's an interesting question. Brian?
I feel like it's a little bit of a reach because he's showing up and saying all of this stuff, and like he's not really teaching anything, and nobody's really teaching him anything. He's just kind of like saying, like, I'm the best. Like Matt was saying at the beginning, it's like seems like full of a lot of pride. Um,
Well, maybe that's part of the hyperbole. We have to.
yeah, well, I get that, but I like your point, and I really, as a young parent myself, I really agree with what Zara is saying too about like the sensory overload and the like how that leads to a bunch of difficulty for the kids later. But I think it is a choice, and I feel like that's on parents 100%. But I think a big problem is that the parents are consumed in that same way by a lot of those things. So then, like you were kind of mentioning, you kind of teach your kid to be like you in a way, whether you intend that or not. Um, and then that kind of somehow relates it to me to like how everybody's kind of mind is connected, and or we're all part of kind of one consciousness or stream of consciousness or something like that. I don't know, but I like that you bring it back to parenting. That rings true for me. Uh, but the language is challenging for me to deal with.
A number of the films that we've seen about the life of the Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, is always interesting because they talk about, the process that they go through to identify him as the reincarnation of the 13th Dalai Lama. And so one of the things about him that they dramatize, in these films and so on, is his, insistence, oh, you're sitting in my seat. Oh, those are my beads. Oh, this is mine. He's identifying and personally, claiming that these things are his. And, and so he wanted to sit at the head of the table and things like that. So that's an interesting thing. And I think that those things aren't made up. That's fairly recently. I mean, that's within, our lifetime just about. And so, to see the way that, this karmic thing operates and so on, and how it can operate with a holy being too, and so on, and how a child might, misinterpret that or use that, for with selfishness and so on. So I just think that whole dynamic of how we're born, what we're born into, what we have all the potentials to be, what our karma is, how our ego develops is something to keep our eye on and something to consider. Because we haven't been doing a very good job of it so far, have we?
I think that kind of relates to what Debbie was saying about maybe like how kids will kind of forget those things too as they get older. My son used to say, I love my new family. Like, what?
Really?
Yeah, and so I don't know. Some of those things I think are true, or like Zara was saying, like how they are kind of taught to forget their Buddha nature. I liked that, and relate to that.
That's really interesting.
Lance, quickly to wrap it up to that point, what I was reading recently from a practical application is just like from like the 21st century, when kids recognize the difference between like possessiveness, like possession, like that is mine, that's when they lose that God consciousness, their Buddha nature. When kids actually develop that as a beyond a concept into application, that's my thing.
Right.
That's when that innocence, like that divinity is lost.
The ego is developing.
Yes. So when you start hearing that versus like, so if you have a small child still being really good about that language and saying this is every, like, even as long as you can, because once they get into public school, it's definitely gone by age 8, the
So,
possession.
so isn't it a culture that helps to shape that or help to protect the child from that?
You know what's really interesting about that? That's new. For 90% of human history, we were hunters and gatherers, and nothing was really yours, right? You had, the clothes that you were wearing, you had simple implements. Depending on your environment, you would have almost nothing, right? Or even if you did, things were communal. And it's like, if you're like 1 year old, it's like, that's my pot. They're not going to care about it because that was not it. That just really wasn't part of it. So that's really interesting that no, we weren't designed that way. That happened when we really started to accumulate stuff.
Thank you. All right. Well, see, this becomes a thought-provoking chapter. Okay. So let's go to chapter 9 then. So I asked Debbie to start to read that in its entirety. It's just 2 pages.
Okay.
So please, keep it slow and intelligible so a 5-year-old like me can understand it.
Okay. Um, yeah, let me know if you can't hear you. I'm close to the machine.
Oh, that's good.
Chapter 9, the ornaments. Monks, at the time of the constellation of Sutra, after the constellation of Hasta had passed, the chief priest of the king, who was called Udayana, the father of Udayin, went before King Shuodana, surrounded by some 500 priests, and said, Your Majesty, please know that it is now proper for ornaments to be made for the prince. And the king replied, Very well, then do it. At that time, King Shuddhodana had 500 types of ornaments made by 500 Shakyas. He commissioned bracelets, anklets, crowns, necklaces, rings, earrings, armbands, golden belts, golden threads, nets of bells, nets of gems, shoes bedecked with jewels, garlands adorned with various gems, jeweled bangles, chokers, and diadems. When the ornaments were completed, the Shakyas went before King Shuddhodana at the time of the constellation of Pushya and said, King, please ornament the prince. The king replied, It is better if you ornament the prince and make these offerings to him, since I have commissioned the ornaments for the prince. They replied, The prince should wear these ornaments that we have made for 7 days and nights. This will make our efforts meaningful. At dawn, as the sun rose, the Bodhisattva entered the park known as Stainless Array, where Mahaprajnapati Gautami took him into her lap. 80,000 women welcomed the Bodhisattva and gazed at his countenance. 10,000 girls welcomed the Bodhisattva and gazed at his countenance. 10,000 Shakyas welcomed the Bodhisattva and gazed at his countenance. 5,000 priests also arrived and gazed at the Bodhisattva's countenance. Then the ornaments that had been commissioned by the gracious king of the Shakyas were fastened onto the Bodhisattva's body. As soon as the ornaments were placed on the Bodhisattva's body, The radiance of his body eclipsed their luster. They did not glitter or gleam, and they lost all their shine. They were just like a lump of coal that is placed next to gold from the Jambu River. It also does not glitter, gleam, or shine. In the same way, when the ornaments were struck by the light radiating from the Bodhisattva's body, they lost all their glitter, gleam, and shine. And thus it was that any ornament that was placed on a Bodhisattva's body lost its luster, like a lump of soot thrown before gold from the Jambu River. Then the goddess of the pleasure grove, Vimla, revealed her vast body before the king and the group of Shakyas, and spoke these verses to them. Even if the entire Trikulokasam, with its cities and towns, were filled with stainless and beautiful gold, a single coin of gold from the Jambu River would steal its splendor, leaving the other gold bereft of glory and brilliance. Even if this entire earth were filled with gold from Jambu Dvipa, the light radiating from the pores of the glorious God would outshine it. It would not shine or gleam, but lose its beauty and glow. Before the blissful protector, it would appear just like soot. He is brimming with hundreds of qualities, adorned by his own magnificence, not beautified by ornaments. His body is perfectly stainless. The glows of the sun and the moon, the stars, jewels, fire, chakra, and Brahma are no longer bright in front of his intense glory. His body is adorned with signs, the result of previous virtue. So why would he need ordinary ornaments made by someone else? Remove the ornaments. Do not disturb the one who makes the foolish wise. He who brings supreme knowledge does not wear artificial ornaments. Chanda was born at the same time as the son of the kingdom. Give these beautiful, spotless jewels to him, the servant. Reflecting that the Shakya clan would flourish and become supreme, the Shakyas were delighted and amazed. Having spoken these words, the goddess scattered divine flowers over the Bodhisattva and disappeared. This concludes the 9th chapter on the ornaments.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go right into it on this chapter 10?
Yes, please. Oh, no. Let's talk about chapter 9 first.
Okay.
Does anybody have any comments about it? Well, one thing I think that's interesting to observe is here it seems like it's setting a precedent or something, making a statement that the Buddhas shall not be adorned. And when we see images of the Buddhas in the paintings or in the statues or in any of the drawings, the thing that always or one of the things at least that always differentiates the Buddhas is they don't have any jewelry on. They only have an ordinary robes. They're sitting in an ordinary position, whereas all these other deities and so on that are, parts of becoming enlightened are all glorified with all these ornaments and so on. So I think here is a reference to that precedent. Bernie, you have any comment about that?
I just wanted to say my impression of the chapter was at the very beginning they gave the description of the ornaments that were made, and these are the typical ornaments that are worn by the peaceful bodhisattvas in their imagery, armbands and collars and necklaces and things like that. So generally, as you say, what they call the my mind is terrible. Nirmanakaya Buddhists are in monks' robes and without ornaments, but the Sambhogakaya Buddhists, at least the peaceful ones, are generally ornamented as if they were princes.
Well, I would say the Bodhisattvas, but like the Dhyani Buddhas or Sambhogakaya Buddhas.
Okay, well, then I might be wrong, but generally the bodhisattvas like Avalokiteshvara or any of the
Well, they're bodhisattvas, yeah.
Vajrasattva for that matter too is also wearing ornaments.
True. That's
So
true.
it's-
You're right about that.
So yeah, it's generally then the text they say he's envisioned in his Sambhogakaya form. It's how these things begin. So, but of course, there's both kinds, as you said. There are those without ornaments and those with ornaments.
So yeah, so their radiance is greater than all the ornaments themselves, and so there's
Yeah,
no need for them.
it's just magnifying the glory of the Buddha once again.
Does that imply a certain humility, you think?
Well, you got to say this. It's while this is put into the mouth of the Buddha, this is really derives from the devotion of his followers who wrote this text. So they took the traditional story of the Buddha, and they what would be the right word? They decorated it up some, so it's really a sign of the great devotion that the followers of the Buddha had at the time that this was written. That they would not only say he was great, he was the super greatest, ultimate person who ever lived. That's really just a sign of their devotion.
Anybody else have a comment?
It's a real contrast because the rest of the text really goes into great detail about all forms of ornamentation. Clothing, jewelry, these are decorating areas. It really, there's so much of that. There's so many descriptions of the things that are given to or wearing to beautify people. Perfume, clothing, silk, ornaments, jewels, ornaments everywhere, jewels everywhere. And this is the first mention that has been made of that. Oh, we created all these wonderful things for him and we put him on them and they look like trash because he's just perfect. So it's a huge contrast.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just thinking, in some cultures, I'm thinking of in Tibet, in old Tibet, that the women in particular would wear all their jewelry. They'd have, their family fortune was tied up in their jewelry and so on, and they would wear it at every opportunity. So does that speak to the human ego? Well, we're not God, we're not Buddha, but we can dress up, and adorn ourselves. I don't know. It's just a thought that crossed my mind.
Well, it's an interesting one because other than that, their clothing and their ornaments, their material culture is pretty simple. And, as long as you have a house and you're able to feed yourself, the rich people and ordinary people, I'm not going to say poor people, but, the destitute, but, people live pretty much, the same. And, so it was and they still do that. They're still, I don't, when we were watching the movie, Friday, which I know everybody wasn't here, but they had filmed, several women from the Ladakh area, and you can tell because they wear these hats with this giant plate of turquoise over their heads, right? And every region in Tibet has their own ornamentation and their own hats. It is interesting. It's an interesting point.
Yeah, maybe it's a stretch or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. I'd like to ask, some Tibetans about it, but the men had the land. The men had the animals. Those were the other things that were the measure of wealth in their society. But the women had this jewelry, and most of it came from the sea, didn't it? Most of it was mined, from the land that came up, the turquoise and everything was all lying on the ocean bed before the Himalayas rose up. And now all this stuff, the pearls and all these things, rose up that was sediment that was in this vast ocean before it became the Great Plateau. Okay. Well, let's carry on now and go to chapter 10, the demonstration at the writing school. So here, let me see. So I asked Zara, you're going to read the first page down through 10.8, right?
Yeah.
And Matt's going to come and read through 10.9 and the rest of 10.15. And then Bernie was going to read after that to the end.
Chapter 10, the demonstration at the writing school. Monks, when the young child had grown a little older, he was taken to school. He went there amid hundreds of thousands of auspicious signs, and he was surrounded and attended by tens of thousands of boys, along with 10,000 carts filled with hard food, soft food, and condiments, and 10,000 carts filled with gold coins and gems. These were distributed in the streets and road junctions and the entrances to the markets of the city of Lalitavistara. At the time, a symphony of 800,000 cymbals were sounded, and a heavy rain of flowers fell. Hundreds of thousands of girls, adorned with all kinds of jewelry, perched themselves on the balconies, turrets, arches, windows, upper stories, and roofs of the homes. Gazing at the Bodhisattva, they tossed flowers. There were also 8,000 goddesses who were adorned with loose hanging jewelry, carried Bhadramkara gems. They went ahead of the Bodhisattva, cleansing his way. Gods, Nagas, Yaksas, Gandharvas, demigods, Garudas, Kanaras, and Maharagas revealed the upper halves of their bodies and festooned wreaths of flowers and woven silk from the sky. All the Sakya factions, with King Sudahana leading the way, went ahead of the Bodhisattva. With such an array of this, the Bodhisattva was taken to school. As soon as the Bodhisattva arrived in school, the schoolmaster, who was called Visvamitra, was unable to withstand the Bodhisattva's splendor and radiance and frustrated to him, face down on the ground. A god from the heaven of joy, called Subhanga, saw the schoolmaster collapse on the ground and, grabbing him with his right hand, raised him up. Suspended in the sky, Subhanga then spoke the following verse to King Suddhodana and the crowd. Whatever topics of knowledge are circulating in this world of humans, numbers, scripts, mathematics, permutations of the elements, and all the immeasurable mundane techniques of craftsmanship, this child already learned these things many tens of millions of eons ago. Nonetheless, he acts solely in harmony with people. The well-instructed one thus came to school for the sake of instruction, in order to mature many children for the highest vehicle, and to bring a myriad of other beings to immortality. He knows the way of the path of the transcendent fourth truths. He is adept in how things arise based on causes, and how the sensation and termination of conditioned existence leads to the calm state. When he knows all that, how could he not know the subject of scripts? There is no master superior to him throughout the three worlds. Among all gods and humans, he alone is foremost. All of you do not know even the names of the scripts that he has learned before many tens of millions of eons ago. This pure being knows in a single instant the manifold diverse thoughts of beings. When he knows such invisible, formless things, why mention the visible forms of scripts? When he had spoken these verses, the god honored the Bodhisattva with the celestial flowers and immediately thereafter disappeared. The nannies and entourage of maids were asked to stay at school while the remaining Sakyas, headed by Sudahana, departed. The Bodhisattva took up writing board made of sandalwood. It was decorated with flecks of divine gold of prime quality and studded with precious gems on all sides. He then addressed the master Visvamitra. That's Matt, right? 10:9.
Matt, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which script, O Master, will you be teaching me? Will it be the Brahmi script, the Korosti script, or the Puskarasari script? Will it be the Anga script, the Vanga script, the Magadha script, the Mangalya script, the Anguilla script, the Sakari script, the Brahmavali script, the Prusya script, the Dravida script, the Kirata script, the Dakshinya script, the Ugra script, the Samkhya script, the Anuloma script, the Avumudra script, the Dharada script, the Kasya script, the Sina script, the Luna script, the Huna script, the Madhyaksar Avistara script, the Puspa script, the Deva script, the Naga script, the Yaksa script, the Gandharva script, the Kinara script, the Maharaga script, the Sura script, the Garuda script, the Megarkara script, the Vasayaruta script, the Bauma Deva script, the Antarika Deva script, the Udaraka or Udipa script, the Apar Godani script, the Peru Vidya script, the Utsta script, the Nixepa script, the Viksepa script, the Praksepa script, the Sagara script, the Vajra script, the Leka Pratileka script, the Nudruta script, the Sastra Varta script, the Gana Varta script, the Uks Se Pavarta script, the Nixeparvarta script, the Padalikita script, the Virutarapada Samadhi script, the Yavad Asotarapadar Samdi script, the Mahyad Harini script, the Sarvaru Tasam Grani script, the Vidya Nuloman Vimishra script, the Tapasta Pata script, the Rokamana script, the Dharani Praksini script, the Gagana Praksini script, the Sarvar Sadini Sadyanda script, the Sarvasara Samgrahini script, the Sarva Bhutara Tagrani script. Master, which of those 64 scripts will you teach me? The schoolmaster, Visvamarita, was amazed and he smiled. Setting aside pride, conceit, and arrogance, he replied with the following verses. How wonderful! Even though the pure being is learned in all these treatises in the world, he follows the conventions of the world. Thus he has come to school. He has learned scripts, even the names of which I have not heard, yet he has come to school. Although I indeed see his face, the crown of his head is out of sight. If his knowledge of scripts is already perfect, how can I school him in that knowledge? This God, great God of gods, supreme divine scholar among all gods, is superior and without equal. No person in the world is comparable to him. Only because of his unparalleled expertise in applying knowledge and means will I teach this learned being, the final refuge of all beings. Monks, then the schoolmaster taught writing to the Bodhisattva along with 10,000 other children. However, through the power of the Bodhisattva, as the schoolmaster was saying the alphabet to the children, he did it in the following manner.
When he said the letter R, out came the statement, every composite phenomena is impermanent. Oh God.
I
On
think
it-
we can skip those.
no. Well, it's just the print is small that I'm having. The light is poor. Anitya Sarvamskara. When he said the letter A, the long A, out came the statement, beneficial to self and others. Atma Parahita. When he said the letter E, out came the I in our alphabet. Out came the vast development of the senses. Indriya Vaipulya. When he said the letter E, long I, out came the statement, the world is riddled with plagues. Ita Bahulam Jagat. When he said the letter U, out came the statement, the world is rife with misfortune. Upad Rabba Bahulam Jagat. When he said the letter U, the long U, out came the statement, the world is of little substance. Una Sattvam Jagat. When he said the letter E, out came the statement, faults come from desire. Evana Samutta Dana Dosha. When he said the letter I, out came the statement, the noble path is virtuous. Aryapati Aryapata Shreyaniti. When he said the letter O, out came the statement, the stream has been forded. Okotara. When he said the letter O, which is actually the long O, out came the statement, spontaneously generated. Alpapa Dukkha. When he said the letter Om, out came the statement, the emergence of what is efficacious. Amogopati. When he said the letter A, out came the statement, reaching an end. Astam Gamana. When he said the letter Ka, out came the statement, immersion in the full ripening of actions. Karma Vipaka Vatara. When he said the letter Ka, actually, I won't talk about this Sanskrit alphabet right now, but it's you've got two forms. You've got the vocalized and the unvocalized version. So when he said the letter Ka, out came the statement, all phenomena are like space. Kasam Ashvara Dharma. When he said the letter Ga, out came the statement, immersion in the profound Dharma of dependent origination. Gambhiri Radharma Pratya Samupada Vatara. When he said the letter Ga, out came the statement, eradicating the darkness of delusions and the thick veils of ignorance. Gana Pata Patala Vidya Moha Dakara Vidamana, actually. When he said the letter N, that's N with the dot over top, which is NG, ing, out came the statement, the complete purification of factors. Anga Vitsudi. When he said the letter Cha, out came the statement, the path of the Four Noble Truth. Chaturya Satyapata. Oh my God. When he said the letter Cha, out came the statement, abandoning the passion of lust. Chandara Gaprahana. When he said the letter Ja, out came the statement, transcending old age and death. Jaraman Jaramarana Sarma Tikra Mana. When he said the letter Ja, out came the statement, vanquishing the forces of the god of love. Jasa Dva Balan Nigrahana. When he said the letter Nya, out came the statement, making known, Jnana Pana. When he said the letter Ta, out came the statement, severing the round of rebirth, Vato Prachedana. When he said the letter Ta, out came the statement, a question rejected out of hand, Tapani the Iya Prashana. When he said the letter Da, out came the statement, vanquishing the evil and those who cause discord. Damaram Aran Nigrahana. When he said the letter Da, out came the statement, the impure regions. Mida Vishaya. When he said the letter Na, out came the statement, afflictions are subtle. Renu Klesha. When he said the letter Ta, out came the statements, suchness is undifferentiated. Tata Sambeda. When he said the letter Ta, out came the statement, strength, power, force, and self-confidence. Tama Bala Vega Vaishradya. When he said the letter Da, out came the statement, generosity, discipline, restraint, and gentleness. Danda Amasamayam Asarabhya. When he said the letter Da, out came the statement, the wealth of the noble ones is sevenfold. Dhamma Maryanam Sapta Vadyam. Vadam, not Vadyam. When he said the letter Na, out came the statement, full knowledge of the name and form. Nama Rupa Parisnya. When he said the letter Pa, out came the statement, the absolute. Paramarta. When he said the letter Pa, out came the statement, the actualization of the attainment to fruition. Pala Prapti Shaksat Kriya. When he said the letter Ba, out came the statement, liberation from bondage. Bandhanam Moksha. When he said the letter Ba, out came the statement, the destruction of existence. Bhava Vibhava. When he said the letter Ma, out came the statement, the cessation of arrogance and pride. Madamano Hashamana. Shamana, right. Okay. When he said the letter Ya, out came the statement, understanding phenomena exactly as they are. Yata Vada Dharma Prata Pativada. When he said the letter Ra, out came the statement, dissatisfaction with pleasures is delighting in the absolute. Raja Rati Paramara Parama Tadarati. When he said the letter La, out came the statement, severing the vine. Lata Chedanana. When he said the letter Va, out came the statement, the best vehicle. Varayana. When he said the letter Sa or Sha, out came the statement, calm abiding and insight. Shamatha Vipassana. When he said the letter Sa, or Sha again, actually, destroying the six sense spaces and obtaining the super knowledges and wisdoms. Shadayatana Nigra da na Abhivijna Jnana Bhakti. Bhakti. Oh, I need better glasses. When he said the letter Sa, out came the statement, attaining the perfect awakening to omniscient wisdom. Sarva Jnana Abhi Sambodhi Hana. When he said the letter Ha, out came the statement, destroying the afflictions and parting from desire. Hatha Klesha Viraga. When he said the letter Ksha, out came the statement, reaching the end of letters, all phenomena are ineffable. Ksharapanya Ta the Hila Upya Sarva Dharma. Thus, while the schoolmaster taught the children the alphabet, there emerged innumerable hundreds of thousands of excellent Dharma teachings due to the Bodhisattva's power. Moreover, while the Bodhisattva was attending schools, 32,000 children gave rise to thoughts aimed at unexcelled, perfect, complete awakening. This is the circumstance and the reason why the Bodhisattva attended school, even though he was already learned.
Thank you very much. That was courageous and wonderful.
Can we clap it up for Bernie? I say we give it, come on.
I messed up 90% of them. I wish it wasn't a larger typeface. And I had, well, you know, the problem with Sanskrit is they don't separate the words, or in many cases, they don't separate the words. You don't know where one word ends and the next word begins. So it makes it difficult.
Well, that was really good, and thank you all. And there were, by my count, there were 47 points that was made of those syllables, and such as reaching the end of the letters, and each one there was 46 of them that I counted.
Yeah,
And
there are a couple extra letters in there, like the last one, Ksha, normally is not considered part of the Sanskrit alphabet. So it might have something to do with where in India this, or when it was written, but I'm not
well,
smart.
I'm just going by what out came the statement. In each one of those lines, it says out came the statement, and then in English it gives, 7 or 8 words or whatever as to what that syllable was referring to.
All I'm saying is
And for us, that's the important thing.
traditionally in Sanskrit, I believe there are 40 letters in the Sanskrit alphabet and 5 vowels. So there's 2 extra ones snuck in there somewhere, I think. So, oh yeah.
But those points, the
Yeah,
point
yeah.
I'm making now is that, that's the meaningful issue for us,
Right.
is to recognize what those statements are. And many of those statements are from the gateway to the light of the Dharma that we studied, a few weeks ago. So, and then some of it is the 12 links of interdependent origination, which we studied, and it's are included too in the gateway. So a lot of this is interconnected. And the point here was, though, that the Buddha, as a child, knew all this. And so, that's pretty incredible. But, just to some degree, a bodhisattva of his level, it wouldn't be unusual that he went, or you could think of it, that in prior lives, he had been through the training that had made this, that he was able to express this at an early age because he was carrying that karma with him to be able to express that. Any comment?
Well, this is also the first time that he spoke through people, which he did a lot. I mean, by the time you get to the Heart Sutra, it's very common that he goes into, this quiet state and he's speaking through, in the Heart Sutra, he's speaking through Avalokiteshvara. Here he's speaking through the teacher.
Yes. So any other thoughts anybody has? Bernie, as you were reciting this, besides with the tongue twisters, did you have any thoughts that were coming into your mind of what this was representing?
It's each of these are just traditional statements that would be consistent with Buddhism, of course, and either statements about the world or statements about the statements of the qualities of enlightenment. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if there's much to add, and I was caught up in the Sanskrit, so I really didn't have too much time to reflect on it as I was reading.
Matt, you did a very good job of that earlier page that had a lot of tongue twisters in there.
Yeah, Matt
Say
had
that
the,
I did a good job on that shows that the level of bodhisattva you are at right now. That's a 10th booming comment you just made, Lance. 'Cause I was struggling. Yeah, that was tough. That was
Well, you
rough.
did a very good job. That
Thank
was
you.
very good.
Thank you.
Yes. And makes me wonder, of your background, what you bring with you. But so before, when we first started talking about these 3 chapters, and there was some degree of, I don't know what the right word is. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but there was some kind of skepticism or confusion or non-belief or incredulousness, at all this. How could this possibly be? And this is the kind of stuff that we're trying to escape. But meanwhile, here they're presenting this kind of glorified being and these incredible, word pictures that they're creating and everything. Has it changed in your mind, Matt? What do you think of it now? Is it the same?
Well, I mean, I think it's really just trying to find, the meaning and what it means to any one person, and looking at kind of what is trying to be communicated through through the chapters, through the literary devices and through this kind of language and everything. Like, for example, like what Bernie was saying with the last, where the chapter where he was saying, or the 2 chapters ago, where it seems like, to me at least, how I would interpret that, similar to what Bernie was saying, of it seemed like they were communicating to people at that. I'm thinking of someone reading it at that time or listening to it at that time, who's coming with the religious background that's being referenced in that chapter. So it's showing that this path is beyond that of a worshiping of a god or something of this external force, that it's offering something different than that in this very dramatic way that it was explaining it. So I guess I think of it in those ways, maybe, of just kind of finding what is it that's trying to be communicated, I guess, in these chapters, trying to reflect on it and not look at it through that lens. But yeah, it is tough for me because it's it's kind of a coming full circle on some level too, because the one of the things that originally attracted to me to Buddhism was the lack of the kind of religiosity, something like that, something like the theism, all of this that I found difficult in other religious traditions. Um, so I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, but those are kind of some of my mixed thoughts that come to mind and things I'm trying to reconcile and how I tend to work with it.
Well, thank you for that. But at the same time, we can say, well, we've moved on from that culturally or something like that. But is it something that we say, oh, let's just chop that off and just forget about it? We don't have to we don't have to study that history anymore because our history, our current contemporariness is much better. So we don't need to know the history. Or is it worthwhile that there is a history and there is a value to that, and we should not let that get lost?
We should never let history get lost. There's no one of the great faults of the human species is we have history, we have this ability to know what went on thousands of years ago. It should never be lost. It is never useless. It is so hard to get information transmitted, through thousands of years. It should never be lost. Everybody should see it. That's just my opinion, but I think I'm right.
Well, I agree with you. Whatever the degree of difficulty and so on, there's something to be appreciated. It is the human story. And we can see how sophisticated people were, 2,600 years ago, 2,000 years ago. There's a great deal of sophistication here.
There is, and we did not, we're also, it's a caste system. The caste system, a caste-based society is radically different from other forms of class. And, that really is a huge driver of it. It's a huge driver of, the Buddha was born of human beings as a human being. And, and of course he had to excel. This was something that the audiences of the time really, they kind of needed convincing and they needed reminding, because so many aspects of Hinduism are very caste-based, and they're very your station in life is an indication of your merit, and that's great if you're a Brahmin, but there's always that, human tendency to be like, oh, if you're not doing well, it's your fault. You're not good enough. And, the Buddha was not, he came from that context, and his, he started being worshipped because that was what, the first Buddhists were Hindus. So this was very natural to them, very normal. And it would be very normal to say, okay, well, the Buddha is better, right? The mind of the Buddha is better than the mind of a god, because the mind of a Buddha has completely transcended, and we know the gods haven't. So this is all a very logical thing. It's quaint, it's it's histrionics, it's hyperbole, it's a lot of things, but it's really important to still be looking at this to understand it. Our practices, it's not like Christianity where, we're not doing, Christians don't speak in the original Aramaic. They don't keep, there's some ritual stuff that they've definitely kept, but it's not nearly to the level of, our practices, where if you want, you have to know a lot. You have to know the history of Asia, really, in order to understand all the practices and what all the elements are going on. So I'd have to agree with you. Yeah, it's important. I think it is.
I think
It's
I
not
think
something that we each have to be. I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
no, no, please, please.
I was just going to say that it's not required, it's not necessary for us to be professors of history, but just to have a familiarity with it is enough, I think, and to be able to have an appreciation of what it is to be a human being and to be able to apply, the wisdom that's locked and not locked or is embedded in these kinds of words and sutras and teachings and so on that we can make relevant in the 21st century. Isn't that, what we say? This is Buddhism for 21st century minds, and see that this works here, but we shouldn't forget what brought us to this point. That would be a huge mistake. So I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, that's actually really in line with what I was thinking is that I think it's very valuable, and certainly knowing the history being very valuable as well. But I think it's our task to translate it into what it means in our context, in our social, cultural context. And there's a lot to be, I think, of value in our own cultural and social history and heritage that has come after this as well. And but while at the same time, not having a sense of humility when looking at it as well. So it's not like something of whether we have a better way of interpreting these texts or something. I don't think of it even in terms of like a better or worse, but that it has to. I think we're called to translate into a way that's meaningful for us in our lives. And I know earlier on in my engagement with Tibetan Buddhism many years ago now, that was something that my failure to do that task adequately was part of what drew me away from the practice. Was it was too much trying to force it into being like Tibetan in a way that my mind couldn't gel with. It created too much dissonance. So I kind of went elsewhere for a period of time. Yeah, and and I think there's something really beautiful in it too of us engaging with this material and these texts and these traditions in our current culture that it didn't come from. And that seems like that's where a lot of the innovation has come over the years when it's gone to Buddhism's gone to Tibet or Japan or these different places, and really wonderful traditions come out of that.
Very well, thank you. Bernie, did you have a comment?
Not really. Just listening to what everybody else is saying. Just to say that, repeat what I said before. This is the attitude that the people around the birth of Christ had about the life of the Buddha. And the story is an elaboration of the traditional story. Plus, they're sneaking in some Dharma teaching into the text as well. So different texts are going to appeal to different people. Another thing you have to remember from this time is that although the texts might be written down, there were no printing press. So you would hear these texts by hearing them recited, but most likely by a monk, but not necessarily. So you're listening to this. You're not reading it typically if you're living at this time period. I mean, that's all. I don't know if that makes any difference, but it might. I mean, it reads differently than it does when you listen to it. So, and I think that's true of a lot of classical texts. So that's all I have to say.
I think it's interesting to note the way that I got introduced to, this idea of studying the sutras was that once a year in a Dharma center or a monastery, they take all these books down from the Kagyu, that it's called the Kagyu. They take them down and they read them in the shrine room. And they might have, let's say, 20 or 30 monks that are each taking one part of a book or one whole book and reading it all together, all at the same time, very fast. So there's not like there's a mental comprehension of what's being said, but it's the point that the vibrations are being, maintained. The teachings are being maintained, and it's up to individuals at whatever time, wherever, to kind of slow it down, bring it into themselves, because it inspires other people, because it keeps that vibration very, very powerful, is the mental image that I have of that. It keeps it charged up. At least it be forgotten. So at Dharmasuriya, where they were doing this, the Tibetans would come in and would be doing that. And then we had, from these translations from 84,000, the website, we had a book of those, not all of them, and then we had, Western people who started reading these. And I started thinking to myself, wow, this is really great stuff. This is really good. So this is what inspired me to start reading it and then to want to share it with everybody. Thank you. Zara, would you like to make any comments?
I was just going to ask if anybody had read the Upanishads. Had you read them?
No, the extent of what I've read was the Bhagavad Gita.
Bernie, have you?
Only very one or two. I have not read the whole set of Upanishads.
There's a lot of them. Debbie, what about you?
No, I haven't. I'll freely admit it.
Have you read them, Zara?
I was just, well, so part of what I'm doing right now, this is like a separate thing, but I'm trying to understand some of the history. Sorry, yeah, my video's on. So I'm trying to, this is more just self-study outside of our Sangha, but I'm trying to just get more of the background of that region by engaging in ongoing self-study of the Vedas, the Upanishads, like the knowledge-based, like, because you just said something that hit home with me about the transmission of this knowledge was through sound originally. And so from the Vedas, like just people listening to cosmic or universal sound, and then it getting translated into words, like that people could then provide an oral history, and then it became written. And then how that later evolved into what we're studying and we're practicing as a personal system of morality that we call Buddhism. So to me, it's just fascinating, the evolution. And Matt, some of your comments, what you just said, I do think there has to be sort of every century or so, there has to be spiritual guidance from like whoever the current spiritual leaders are in interpreting these historic texts to what is happening right now. Like, and like we couldn't just like the Quran or Bible, like you have to have spiritual leaders or that are guiding, okay, this is what's happening now. This is the best way to guide, people with this historic things that were written hundreds or, whatever years ago. So I do, to your point, Matt, agree with what you said about the need for that. That is very important, because otherwise it becomes so or fragmented and unrelatable. So.
Very good. Thank you. Brian, how about you? You have any comments about what we've been talking about here?
I apologize for being a little distracted there for a while. My kid's coming in and interrupting me before bedtime. But I was thinking with the last piece, I might be a little off on the flow of the conversation right now, but as Bernie was reading the last piece and they were going through each letter in the Sanskrit alphabet, and there was kind of like a Dharma teaching along with that, I was wondering if they weren't kind of setting the framework for like when you put the letters together, then and he starts to speak other things, then each letter kind of like is just, or each word is so full of all this like Dharma meaning that, you know, even from a young age when he was first starting, like every letter that he spoke, Dharma kind of like sprang forth from like every syllable or something like that. I felt like maybe that was the symbolism, but maybe that's just my kind of bend on it. I don't know. But I like that last part because I felt like we're getting into the teachings. A lot of those little phrases were really cool and meaningful, I thought.
Yeah, and as you said that, it made me think about, in the Nundro, when we're doing the Nundro practice, and we learn to do that, and we learn to manifest the protection circle around the heart center. And it begins, and you're visualizing, here are these dakinis that are all standing shoulder to shoulder, this Vajra fence. They're creating this Vajra fence, and each one of these dakinis has a name, and the name is one of these syllables. I, ri, li, li, ka, ga, na, za, na, da, da, na, da, da, na, ba, ma. Yawalawa, sa, ka, sa, ha, kriya, so, ha. So, in a simple way, it's being looked at as this Vajra fence, that is protecting the integrity of the heart center. But at the same time, it also becomes these attaining, these statements, that they're protecting it through these statements. That if you can utter these statements, if you can know what these statements mean, that becomes the protection. It's not from somebody coming through, to do harm. It's somebody to come through who's ignorant, or somebody who's to come through who's emotional, and so on. And these things are pointing to how to purify those things.
That makes sense to me, Lance. Like the more you get into mantra practice and recitation, the sounds themselves protect you from your ego getting down that pipe hole of suffering. Yeah.
You're tuning into that vibration, that om, ah, hum.
Thank you.
All right, well, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other thoughts that you'd like to bring up?
Oh, how long, this is more of just a logistics question. Like, how long do people study this? Like in Tibet, are they, is this part of their curriculum, like their own history? Like, do school kids read the sutras?
Oh, I don't think so. I think this is done in the monasteries.
Okay, so this is like what we're doing is above and beyond even most people in that part of the region where this is derived from.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And the Tibetans that come and hear about Western people, who really dig into these kinds of things are amazed because it's not a part of their culture. They'll send one family member, into the monastery, a nun or to be a nun or a monk, and they become the family representative doing all this stuff.
Well, maybe part of our karma, though, to have been born here to transmit this.
Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine what you might have been in a past life, and I think of myself sometimes as a maverick who got reborn as an American, after spending a lifetime being a Tibetan or something.
Sure, Lance. I'm going to ponder on Debbie and Bernie on what I think their past lives were. Get back to you all next Monday.
Well, I think it's worthwhile to think about what you were.
Oh, I already know. I already have thought of what I may have been. Oh, Bernie already knows too, I can tell.
No, I don't. I always thought that I was Chinese in my last life, but that's just a pure guess. So,
All right. Well, very good.
because that's the way the statistics work, don't they? More Buddhists in China than anywhere else, at least at that time. So,
That's such a Bernie answer. That's what the statistics say. Yeah.
That's Bernieism. I was like, that's exactly what he would say.
All right, very good. All right, so next week we're going to start with the Joseph Campbell film, and I'll start printing those books, and I'll let everybody know about that. And I think it's going to be very logical. You're really going to appreciate this next round. You know, talking about the rest of the Lalitavistara, it comes up to the point where Buddha becomes enlightened and starts going out and, you know, he manifests his ministry, so to speak. That's where it ends. So it goes up through all these formative years and his enlightenment and so on like that. Then when we finish that, then we're going to go to the King of Samadhi Sutra. And so that's like the essence of what the Buddha Dharma is in a very uncomplicated way. It cuts through what might be the religiosity, the religiousness of the Buddhism that a lot of people negatively associate with, you know, and it's going to get right to, well, what is that enlightened mind? What is that liberation? And the Samadhi Raja speaks directly to that. So we'll be ripe for that, I think. All right, so let's see. Brian, you were the Umze this evening. Brian, you must have this book too, this red book. So this is the prayer book that we use most all the time now. And on Sundays, we use this book among some other books insofar as here is the fundamental practice, you know, to be able to develop a routine practice. Here it is in a sequence that we can follow. So I just point this out to you, and so if you can recite the dedication prayer, the Dikorma prayer on page 35, and on page 35, 36, and 37 would be wonderful. Do you have that?
Yeah, but my page 35 doesn't look like the Dakorma prayer. The Dakorma prayer is the
What page is that on?
well, I'm just trying to remember. The Dakorma prayer is
Are you
by
looking at
virtue
this book
collected in
that
the three
sits like
times by
this, or are you
myself
looking at the one that looks like this?
Okay, wait. So it's not the one that opens sideways. Oh, okay, maybe I'm in the wrong one. Dakorma is the one by the virtues collected in the three times. That one.
That's correct, but
Sure.
do you have that book or you don't have it with you?
I do have this one. Yeah, okay. This is familiar. Yeah. Just in English?
Yes.
Okay. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and by all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfectly complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikung Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, and Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
Continue, next page.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, Dakas, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayers. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara or rebirth as a Shravaka or a Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise, even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and in the pervading clarity of the Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om Ahom, Om Ahom, Om Ahom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Very good. Thank you all very, very much.
Good night, everyone.
Hi,
Good
Jeff.
night, Debbie. Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody on YouTube. Okay.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Anson.
You're welcome.